Hello and welcome to the First Right Podcast, your weekly dose of conservative news brought to you by Restoration of America. I'm Hayden Ludwig, Research Director for Restoration News. Be sure to find our work at restoration-news.com. This week we're joined by John Amanchukwu, a fiery North Carolina pastor who's become one of the most courageous Christian leaders of our time. He's here to talk about battling critical race theory, stopping the LGBT cultural revolution, and ending wokeness in our schools. Pastor John Amanchukwu, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I want to start with can we call it a stunt that got you on everybody's radar? And that, of course, is attending all of these woke school board meetings. You've gotten famous in the last couple of years for showing up at these countless meetings and reading from the perverted, hypersexualized, often very graphically depicted school library books that are intended for kids, showing oral sex, gay sex, terrible stuff like that. Tell us about that experience and how you got involved in that.
Well, about 2.5 years ago, a young girl was being demonized in a county called Chatham County, which is about 45 minutes from me. Her professor told her, or rather her teacher told her, that believing in Jesus was tantamount to believing in a brick wall. And after hearing about that, I said that I had to do something and go over there and support her. I didn't know this young lady. She was a Caucasian young white girl in school, just trying to live out her faith and have a biblical worldview and be young at the same time. And as a youth pastor, that touched my heart because leading young children towards the cross and having virtues and values is very important to me, and it should be to parents and even to school systems out there. But I went over there and spoke at that school board meeting, delivered a message, and that message went viral, and has now led me to become what some call the leading voice speaking out at school board meetings nationally. I've now been to 14 states, amassed over 300 million views. I've been able to strike down a transgender policy in New Jersey. We've been able to flip 2 school boards, one in Pennsylvania and in New Jersey. We've been able to remove dozens of pornographic books around this nation and impact legislation. And so the battle has just begun, but we are fighting against evil. This is not simply a Republican versus Democrat battle. This is a battle between evil and good. Where do you stand in that relationship to those two things, good or evil? The Bible says in Isaiah 5:20, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness. Today, left is right, right is left. Up is down and down is up. Boys are girls and girls are boys. A clump of cells is now called, a baby is now called a clump of cells. And so when we look at our current modern day culture, there's a sinister plan to destroy the image of God, which is the Imago Dei. And every Christian believer should be speaking up just like me, willing to contend for the faith and to protect parental rights.
There's so many directions we could take this, and we will get into a lot of it. But clearly, it's not really about the library books. That's the surface issue, really. It's who's going to be Lord over this country. Is it Jesus Christ, or is it the secular God of militant atheism? Is that the way you see it?
Yes, that's exactly right. You appropriately depicted what's going on. We have Marxist atheists who hate this nation. There are also a great deal of anti-Christian bigots who are seeking to corrupt and destruct America. Most of these people are enemies of the cross, and that's what Paul called them himself in his writings. He called these people enemies of the cross. They hate virtues and values. They hate Jesus. They hate the Bible. They are against morality. So therefore, they've crept into our public school systems, and they're bringing books like this. It's called Let's Talk About It. I can't even show you the images in this book. This book rivals Playboy and Swank magazine. It gives Hugh Hefner a run for his money. In this book, you see images of, instructions on how to properly masturbate, right? And how to place butt plugs into your anus. I mean, how is that going to help a child
Yeah, and
improve
these
their
aren't
EOG test score. It's
and
not
these
going to
aren't
help
just
them at
books that
all.
are out there you could buy on Amazon. This is a book in a school library, a public school library aimed at what age group? I mean, who's supposed to be reading these books?
Right. So this book is for teens. I mean, what parent out there wants their teen daughter or son learning how to insert a butt plug? I mean, that's not academic.
Yes.
Consider this book right here. It's called Queer. All right, the ultimate LGBTQ guide for teens. I mean, this stuff is just sinister, man. On page 166, I'll read this here. It talks about anal sex. It says the anus has a lot of bacteria that, when spread elsewhere, can cause lots of problems. If you're going to use a sex toy for anal penetration, be sure to use one made of silicone, because as long as it doesn't have electrical components, it can be easily cleaned and disinfected. Just boil it for 5 minutes or run it through the dishwasher. Make sure it cools off before you use it again. Duh. Because who wants a hot dildo going into their body? I mean, listen, and then you see this image here. It's of two girls in the bed together. I mean, how is this going to help American students compete in a global economy? How is this going to help us in the area of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics? It's not going to help. This is the fruit of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is what they call Pride Month. We're living in that right now, right? Where the woke left, Democrats are parroting and gallivanting around America, shouting pride for the LGBTQ community. That's what pride looks like. It's butt plugs. It's teaching kids about anal sex. It's about convincing kids that, Heather can have 2 mommies and Jody can have 2 daddies. It's about redefining the sanctity of marriage. It's what's taken place in Maryland, where you have a Fourth Circuit U.S. Court that's saying that parents cannot opt their children out of LGBTQ curriculums. That's what's going on. We live in a country today when if a parent says, you know what, I don't want my child to be taught this stuff, that in Maryland today, parents can't opt out. They can't get out of it. So we're being forced to embrace this stuff. And I'm saying not on my watch. And I'm calling parents around this nation to stand up, to use your voice, to be vocal, to have peaceful protest and display civil disobedience. Rebel. You don't have to embrace that. God forbid that we sit idly by and allow these Marxist atheists to pervert the hearts and the minds of our children. Children do not belong to the state. They belong to parents, and they're on loan to their parents by God, not the state.
We've said many times on this show, secularism is not neutral. It's a religion. All those pride flags above your school, that's a conquering army who's declared the new religion that's going to be taught in your classrooms. And what you're describing is exactly that kind of, well, let's call it an intifada, right? Or a jihad. It's, you will believe this. This is the new state god, and we're going to force your kids to believe this. Pastor John, in the intro, we called the LGBT movement a cultural revolution, obviously alluding to Mao's communist cultural revolution in China in the 1960s, because this is so widespread. You're pointing out it's every part of life, and there's no escaping it. Do you have that right? And secondly, do you think Christians and their pastors are starting to wake up to this reality?
Well, yes, after traveling to 14 states, I have 3 takeaways. Number 1, perverts are perverting the hearts and the minds of our children. Number 2, parents are unaware. And number 3, pastors have failed to do their job. And so many of our pastors today are cowards. Revelations chapter 21, verse 8 says that there are 8 reasons why individuals will be sent to the lake of fire. Number 1, for being a coward. And cowardice is not a fruit of the Spirit. And so when the preachers, the shepherds, are afraid to preach biblical truths and standards, the country is in trouble. The Bible says, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. The preacher should stand boldly on truth and proclaim it and not apologize. But today, many of our pastors are afraid of the sheep. Now, that doesn't make any sense because the shepherd is called to lead the sheep, not vice versa. But we have an issue today. People would rather be nice than be faithful. You know, God
Yes.
is looking for faithful Christians, not nice Christians. Nice Christians put pronouns in their bio just to appease people. Nice Christians look the other way when this kind of smut is placed in libraries. Nice Christians go along with the culture because they don't want to offend. But faithful Christians say, hey, God created us male and female according to Genesis 1:27. Faithful Christians say, you know what? I'm looking for a well done from God and not a well done from man until we say and we do what's necessary.
Yeah, and as Christians, you can't help but influence the culture around you. You can't escape it. You can't outsource it to somebody else. You must go out and disciple the nations. That's the final command that we're given in the Gospels. Go out and make disciples of all nations, not in all nations, of the nations themselves. Let's talk about woke homeschooling. And as part of this, I want to talk about your new book, Hoodwinked. I guess I'll bite. Who's doing the hoodwinking here? Tell us about that.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Traveling this country and speaking at school board meetings, I have encountered those who are pushing indoctrination on the left, and I've also encountered some rhinos on the right. I've been told by some conservatives as I've traveled the country speaking out against gender theory, queer theory, and critical race theory that I could choose a better approach to address these issues. So who are we fighting against? We're fighting against people who have lost the moral compass that's necessary to lead a nation. That's who we're fighting against.
Yes.
We're fighting against people, as I said earlier, who are enemies of the cross. They're enemies of truth. That's ultimately who we're fighting against. Now, in the book Hoodwinked, my new book that released last week, everyone go get a copy of it today. Go to iknowgod.us, get a copy, or go to Amazon and purchase a copy. By definition, hoodwinked means to be beyond blindfolded. It meant to have a hood over your head to the point that you can't see any light. The term hoodwinked is an old fogey, antiquated term, but it's appropriate for where we are today. Now, the first lie that I address in my new book is the lie that America is a racist nation. Nothing proves that that's not true, like considering what's going on at the border. Look at the border crisis right now. We have more black, tan, and brown immigrants trying to get into this country than there are people trying to get out. A Pew Research Center study was done in 2019 that proved that 4.6 million black immigrants were living in America. And by 2060, that number is supposed to balloon to about 9.5 black immigrants. How come black, brown, and tan immigrants aren't getting the memo, that America is a racist nation? I'll tell you why, because they want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They want the blessedness of a nation founded upon Judeo-Christian principles. They want liberty and true freedom. They want the access to school choice, right? They want a economic system that's built upon capitalism and not communism and socialism. They want all of these things, so they risk their lives to get into this nation. Let's talk about economics. Asians, they own the highest median income in America, not whites. And Indians are the highest earners in America, not white. And then when you consider the 2008 and 2012 election, Barack Hussein Obama won his presidential campaign twice. And he did this as a black man in America. Now, blacks only make up 13% of the overall population in America in the first place. So in order for a black man to win twice, he has to have a lot of white people voting for him. So the question is, why are there people out there trying to convince blacks that America is a racist nation? They do this because they want to keep blacks on the liberal plantation. They want us to buy into this notion of the Great Society that was pushed by Lyndon B. Johnson, where he said, and I quote, that I will have these niggers voting for the Democrat Party for the next 200 years. That's what they want. And so DEI and this race baiting and race hustling tactic, it's really a form of mental atrophy. Let's keep Black Americans on the liberal plantation. Let's keep them angry with America, so much so that they would give up their birthright and lose the ability to become economically benefited by the strategic system of capitalism in our country. That's what this is all about.
And you look at the problems that are targeting Black communities in this country, a lot of them since the Great Migration out of the South into these northern and western cities like Oakland in California, Harlem in New York. And you notice that beginning in the 1930s and 40s, big, massive abortion mills like Planned Parenthood, the biggest abortion provider in the country, run by Margaret Sanger, were intentionally targeted for their new abortion mills in Black neighborhoods where they still thrive right now. I'm going to quote you on this. You've called Raphael Warnock, the Black Georgia Democrat senator on the far left, the kind of Negro that Margaret Sanger loved. Talk to us about that. It's hilarious, but tell us what you mean.
Well, in a letter to Dr. Clarence C.J. Gamble, Margaret Sanger said, and I quote, that I did not want the word to go out that I wanted to exterminate the Negro population, and that the Black charismatic preacher would be the person that would assist her in doing so if it ever occurred to any of the more rebellious Negroes. In other words, if a Black man or a Black preacher rebelled against abortion, that she would use the Black preacher to assist in convincing them, no, you need to abort your own. Now, Raphael Warnock, a pastor, right? He claims that he's a pro-choice pastor and a pro-choice Christian. Listen, there's no such thing as a pro-choice pastor or a pro-choice Christian. The Bible tells us and lets us know clearly, you know, that we have this thing called the Ten Commandments. And in the Ten Commandments, you know, number 6 says, thou shalt not murder and thou shalt not kill. And then Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 through 19, it discusses 7 things that God calls abominable, one of which is the shedding of innocent blood. The Bible also talks to us about fighting and saving those who are being led away to the slaughter. It's an intentional plan to put these abortuaries in economically disadvantaged communities so that they can destroy the Black community. All of this is a plan. It's a strategy. And so when you consider the viability of Black America in comparison to 2024, in comparison to, you know, the 40s and the 50s, we had large families, you know, and even in that time frame, the Black marriage rate rivaled that of whites. That's true. But along comes the Great Society, along comes the inception of Roe v. Wade in 1973, and today there are 20 million Blacks who are missing. And I say to every Black person out there, you are a fool. Hear me, and hear me good. You are a fool if you vote for the Democrat Party. It's a party that seeks to annihilate children, castrate children, mutilate children, and demonize children. If you vote for the Democrat Party, you are voting for the extinction of your race. That's why I stand against this abortion and this Black genocide that's taking place in America. Consider states like New York. In New York, there are more Black babies aborted than are given birth to. And that was the plan of Margaret Sanger, the original racist. And for those of you who like to talk about racism, right?
Yeah.
If you are pro-abortion, hear me, you are also pro-racism, because the abortion industry was set up to kill Black and brown people. When is Jesse Jackson going to talk about this? When is Reverend Al Sharpton going to talk about this? When is Joy Reid going to talk about this? When is Big Fanny Lying Willis going to talk about this? When is Alvin Bragg and Letitia Lying James? When are they going to talk about this issue that blacks are being killed at an alarming rate in America? They won't do it. Why? Because the white liberals have controlled their minds psychologically, and they can't rebel against it because it goes against their own party platform.
Well, and to put a little color on the Clarence Gamble story, no pun intended, of course, if you look at that guy, he was a eugenicist. Good friends, actually, was on the board of Planned Parenthood. And remember, eugenics is race purification. It was the ideology that drove the National Socialists in Nazi Germany. And that money is still operating today. I did research on this a few years ago. The group called Pathfinder International, which was in the inheritance of Clarence Gamble's Procter & Gamble soap fortune, still uses that funding in order to practice mass abortion on poor African blacks overseas right now. And by the way, we're all paying for that. They get billions of dollars in federal government subsidies for that. So anybody who thinks this was a one-off, oh, that was 50, 100 years ago, no, that is very much the actual white supremacist ideology that's with us today, and it exists entirely on the left.
Yes, you're so right and appropriate in what you're saying. You know, in order to keep a community group solvent for 25 years, in order to maintain a people group, you need a fertility rate of 2.1. All right. In 1950, the total black fertility rate was 3.6. In 1975, it was 2.3. And keep in mind, that's 2 years after the inception of Roe v. Wade. By 2016, that number went to 1.832. And by 2019, it was 1.774. Black America isn't growing. We are shrinking. We used to be the largest minority group, but we've been replaced by Hispanics.
Let's talk about that. Do you see that as an intentional, move by the left to basically get new black people, new voters, people who are as reliable as the black Democratic voter was in the last century? We wipe those people out. We replace them with all these illegal aliens from south of the border. Am I exaggerating, or is that what you see?
That's what we see is cheap votes and it's cheap labor. That's what it is. And so blacks are being replaced at the border. But at the same time, we're supporting a political party that's pushing that. Now, there is a strong push within the black community to leave the liberal plantation. I must say that in 2020, President Trump received nearly 9% of the black vote. In 2024, he's trending about 22%. I am going to do everything possible to move that number from 22% to 25% to 30% to 35% up to 40%. And maybe one day before the rapture comes, more than 50% of black Americans will see the light. I'm on a national campaign to do just that. Now, many blacks are seeing, even in many of our urban cities like Chicago and New York, that, hey, man, they're giving all of these freebies and all of these special accommodations to criminal illegal aliens. I'm not talking about asylum seekers and newcomers. We're lying when we say that. These people are criminal illegal aliens. In New York, if you house a criminal illegal alien, they'll pay you money in the hood to house these individuals. The same thing is taking place in Chicago, and blacks are up in arms. They're angry about it. They're upset. And this is why Joe Biden is losing support, and minorities are beginning to shift from the Democrat Party to become independents because they see what is taking place. It needs to end. It needs to stop. And I believe that President Trump is the best option for the black community today to right the ship.
It does seem like in almost every black family across America, there is that one person who's waking up and saying, Mom, Dad, I can't vote Democrat anymore. I know you raised me to do that, but it's not in our best interest. These people are immoral. We know that black Americans are the best churchgoers. They're the ones most likely to take the Bible seriously of any demographic in the country. You simply have to try to square that with what the godless left and the Democrat elite ranks teach, which is the complete opposite of all of this. Something related to this that I think is going on too is this massive explosion in Christian homeschooling. There's a lot of non-Christian homeschooling going on right now too, but I think it's really led by evangelicals and conservative Catholics who are realizing the corrupt government schools are going to teach us this evil CRT and DEI, and I don't want to lose my kids. I want to raise my kids here at the house or with other Christians in the school exactly the way God made me as a mother or a father to do. Do you see this, Pastor John, as a larger revival that's happening with all Americans, white, black, everything?
Yes, I do. I believe in a three-pronged system for academic and spiritual excellence. You have the Christian home, the Christian church, and the Christian school. That's a three-pronged system that you can rest upon. Whenever one of those legs is missing, things get wobbly, you know? And so, yes, having the Christian school at home is necessary, or supporting Christian schools, that's important as well. And parents are beginning to do that, but we need to ramp up and beef up school choice in America so that parents who are paying twice don't have to do so. There are many parents who pay through their property tax to send their kid to a public school, while at the same time they're homeschooling. I believe that every red penny should go back to that home. If they are a taxpayer, a legal citizen in this country, they should receive every penny to be able to choose how they want to best educate their child.
Yes, that's right. Well, sir, last question. Where can people support your work and follow your excellent ministry and all that you're working on?
Go to iknowgod.us. Go to iknowgod.us and support my work. I am building up an army of what I call cyclones. I'm doing a program called Cyclone 400, where we have created the most comprehensive plan in America on how to reclaim our schools and communities. Go there, download the free battle plan, receive the toolkit, and send some support towards this effort. I believe that if we come together as a nation and we fight back, that we can keep our constitutional republic. We'll have an America to pass on to our children's children that we are proud of, and we will keep Jesus Christ at the forefront of this nation.
Pastor John Amanchukwu, thank you for all you do. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
And thank you, folks, for tuning in, supporting conservative voices like John's, working to expose the truth about the rot spreading through this once great country. Remember that it's only by working together and by praying together that we can restore the United States of America to greatness under Almighty and Sovereign God. I'm Hayden Ludwig. Join us next time as the battle rages on.
First Right, a new kind of news summary without the liberal slant. Every morning, in your inbox, always free. Subscribe by texting First Right to 30161. That's First Right, all caps, one word, to 30161.